What's up you guys, Sasha here. Now a lot of people ask me this question all the time in comments to pretty much every single video, so I wanted to make a dedicated video for all of those people, which is what is the best way for sending money from the UK abroad? Now there's lots of different reasons. Either people are sending money to family, or sometimes you need to go and pay for some goods or services somewhere, or just maybe you got a speeding fine when you were driving through Italy. I don't know who could do that kind of thing, but sometimes you need to go and send a little bit of money to a bank in Perugia for that particular reason. Well, anyway, for whatever reason it is that you need to go and send some money abroad, you might be wondering which option is the best, the cheapest, the fastest. Anyway, I'm going to talk to you about the various different options. I'm going to explain exactly what they cost versus each other, exactly how their cost structures work. But first, let me tell you a little bit about the charges. Now there are actually 5 different charges that exist when sending your money abroad, although most people probably just think that there's one fee, but actually there's a lot more things that you should be considering. Now, number 1, you should consider the type of exchange rate used by the platform or the app or the website that you're using, because not all exchange rates are equal. There are different exchange rates and some are much better than others depending on which one your company uses. So a lot of people will say that they use one type of an interbank exchange rate, which is going to be the best available rate generally available in the market. And certainly some of the leaders in this space, companies like Revolut or companies like Starling and companies like Transferwise, they use the interbank rate in general, which is a good thing. But some companies use other ones. Some companies use exchange rates provided by interchanges or some other third parties, and in those cases those exchange rates might actually be much worse, and in effect you're paying a charge indirectly by taking the worst exchange rate. The second way that you get charged is whether that particular exchange is being booked on the spot, so at the point at which you actually go and do the transfer, whether it's being done on an end of day or the average intraday rate. So there's slightly different ways of doing it. So generally speaking, the spot one is going to be the most accurate, because if you're able to go and send the money at exactly the rate that is prevalent right now, you're going to get the correct rate for your transaction, where some people will only book the transaction at the rate at which it will be either the day before at the close of play. So you know, if today the rate is better, you don't get any of that upside. Or they'll book it on the average rate through the whole of today, because they do all those transactions in batch at the end of the day. So you just need to be aware of that as well. Number 3, some providers, and I'm not going to be talking about most of those providers because I don't like using providers who do this kind of stuff, they will add a load on top of the exchange rate, and they'll bury that in terms and conditions so you won't know about it. What this means is they'll say we use the interbank exchange rate, but the actual exchange rate that you will be transferring your money through will be worse, and the reason it'll be worse is they add their own margin as a sort of hidden fee, and you just need to be aware to check if they use the actual rate that they're quoting, or if there is a load on top of that rate that they're using in order to make some extra money. The 4th type of fee is the most common. It is the processing fee. It's called different things, and some companies just quote you the one fee because they have one way of calculating it. Some companies will have a fixed component and a proportional component depending on how much you're sending. That might make it cheaper or more expensive than the other options. Anyway, and then there is the last one, which is the cash deposit fee. Now this is a sort of indirect fee. It is charged by some of the providers on top of the processing fee, and it's basically the cost of getting your money from your account into the platform, and you just need to be that much more careful to acknowledge the fact that that fee is paid on top of the processing fee in some cases, for example with PayPal. Anyway, there are a lot of options out there. I'm only going to cover the 4 main ones in this video, because although Azimo, Currency Fair, World Remit, Remitly, there's a lot of different options, they do exist. The thing I didn't like about all of those options, including Azimo, which is generally topping the tables at the moment a lot, and a lot of people are talking about it, is they have considerably less transparency in their processes, and as a result, I just don't like recommending them, or I don't want to be talking to people about those, because I just don't feel that those practices are particularly good for the consumer. Some of them, like Azimo, for example, they offer you the first 2 transfers without any fees, but there's no fee schedule published. You can't go and look up exactly what the rate would be if you sent it on their website, like with most of the other ones. And they just do this no fee introductory rate so that they can be atop of the charts, showing you how good their platform is. And then once you begin using it, then all the fees are going to begin coming in down the line. So I don't like that lack of transparency, and the sort sort of like the practices that some of these guys employ. So I'll talk about the mainstream options that most people will be considering. Let's start with Starling. Starling has become very, very popular with people who like to travel, who like spending money abroad, because they offer those kind of things for free within Europe, and the rates in other places are quite reasonable. But you can also send money abroad through Starling themselves as well. Now, Starling does charge fees, but those fees are very, very transparent and somewhat reasonable. They charge 0.4% plus a fixed fee, which depends on the mode of sending the money that you choose. If you choose Swift, which is the more expensive, the faster option, the more certain option, that'll cost you £5.50 per transaction. But if you choose the cheaper option, which gets routed through some local banks, and there's some other ways of sending that money through, that can cost you as little as 30p. There are two major downsides with Starling. The first is that you can only send the money during weekdays when the markets are open, and that's when they're able to go and exchange the money in a live environment, so you can't go and do it at weekends. And the second downside is they're only working with 38 countries, a lot of them in Europe. So some huge countries where a lot of people will want to send their money to, like India, Australia, Russia, Canada, Brazil, for example, just some of the big popular countries, are not included. So that means you can't send your money to any of those countries through Starling. So for all of the providers, I just did two really simple examples to showcase the differences between sending money abroad. I did a low transaction of just £100 being sent to Italy, and a much larger £10,000 transaction being sent to the US, just so that you can get a feel for how much those two transactions cost with every provider, so that they can be compared. Now with Starling, it's reasonably cheap. So the £100 being sent to Italy is 0.4% fee plus the 30p. So that's a total of 70p cost for sending that money over there. And for the £10,000 transaction being sent over to the US, you're going to be charged £40.30 for sending that across, which, you know, is more expensive, but it's still hugely cheaper than some of the mainstream options like Western Union or high street banks, or any of those types of options that people used to use all the time. Anyway, let's move on to Revolut. Now, Revolut are quite unique. They are the only ones that offer genuinely free transaction to send money abroad, but there's a huge amount of caveats. There's a huge amount of rules that you need to be aware of. So I just wanted to go and list them so that you know exactly what you're going to be paying. Now, if you have the account where you're not paying a monthly fee, you're limited to just one free transaction up to £1,000 per month. And that is to send money abroad outside the SEPA zone to any other country that Revolut deals with. After that, you're paying 50p per transaction, and there's a few other rules as well. Now, if you send money above the £1,000 limit, you will have to pay a fee, and that fee is hidden in the load. So it's not a direct fee that they charge, but the load, so the amount of money you have to pay on top of the exchange rate to make the exchange rate worse, is going to be 0.5%. In addition, if you want to send money at the weekend, you'll have to pay another 1% in terms of an extra load that gets baked into the fee. And so if you're wanting to send money frequently or a larger amount or something like that, you will now begin having to pay fees, and those fees are, you know, noticeable. They're larger at that point than Starling's. So if you do pay for the premium or the metal card, you do get benefits like they lift some of those restrictions. You can have unlimited transfers, but you still have to pay for Swift transfers, and the restrictions are not lifted entirely. So some of these loads you still are going to have to pay, even if you're paying for the very, very premium accounts anyway. So in the two examples I gave, presuming that that's your only transactions that month, with Revolut, the £100 being sent to Italy is going to be completely free. The transaction to the US will cost you £50. So because that transaction is over £1,000, you can't go and send it for free, even if it's your only one. And the fees, you know, they're still quite reasonable, but already they're becoming more expensive than Starling. Now, if you want to send transactions via Swift, they do offer that option on top of any of the transfers that you make, and you can send it for £3 to the US, for £5 to anywhere else that works with Swift. So again, that can be a really good option for some people. I'm going to cover at the end which option I think is the best for which types of people. Let's move on to PayPal. PayPal is a very, very common platform that so many people, probably one of the most popular platforms out there, so many people use it to send money abroad, but the value is incredibly bad. So they claim that they charge you 5% up to a maximum of £2.99 in terms of the fee. and then they add 2.5% above the base exchange rate as a further fee. But the problem here is that the base exchange rate is still not the same exchange rate that some of the other guys use, and so there's another third fee hidden in that as well. And as a result, the rates that they're going to be offering you are far, far worse. So to send £100 over to Italy will cost you several pounds, and to send the £10,000 over to the US is going to cost you as much as £429.42. So if you are still using PayPal for sending money abroad, there are other options available that are going to be considerably cheaper. Last, let's talk about Transferwise. Transferwise is my personal favorite because of two things. One, they have an amazing user experience where you can send money to pretty much anywhere, and they take you through exactly what's going to happen. They're super transparent on their fees, and they show you exactly what happens at every stage of the transfer. I just simply love the way that they interact with their customers and the transparency of the firm and how clear they are on their pricing. And their pricing is reasonably simple, but also slightly more complicated than some of the others. So what they do is they charge you a fixed fee plus a percentage-based fee depending on where you're sending money from and where you're sending the money to. So in the examples that I'm talking about, you're going to be paying 26p plus 0.35% for sending money to Italy, for example, or 76p plus 35 basis points, so 0.35% for sending money to the US. So sending the £100 over to Italy will cost you just 61 pence, which is a very good rate. And sending £10,000 over to the United States will cost you just £35.64, which is an incredibly great value for that. Doing that, it is the cheapest out of all of these options. So what does this mean? Which is the best one out of these and which one's going to be the cheapest for you? I'm going to tell you which one depending on your situation. Now, if you're sending irregular payments, let's say you're sending something once a month, or you're sending most of it to Europe and most of it is small, by far the best option for you in that case is the Revolut account. The Revolut account will allow you to send those payments for free if you're just doing, say, one a month and that transaction is under 1,000. You're not going to have to pay any fees whatsoever. They use the interbank exchange rate. It is a really, really good deal. So if that's you, Revolut is going to be the best option. If you like something really simple, if you like just having one account so you don't have to open the second one and move your money between them, so that then you have to go and send money from that, etc., etc., you might want to go and get the Starling account, because it's the only one where you get a genuine, proper current account through a bank, which also allows you to send money abroad at a very reasonable rate. All the others are going to be apps in their own right that you probably have a current account with, which will be separate. So if you like that simplicity, you can go and get Starling. Plus you get still very, very good rates. They're not free like Revolut, but they're very, very good. If you're doing lots of transfers, they in some cases will be better than Revolut as well. Now, if you're doing a lot of transactions, if you're sending a lot of money abroad, say paying for lots of different services, or you want to send a very large transaction, like you're buying something very expensive, in that case, from my experience and in my personal opinion, Transferwise is the best option. Now, I use Transferwise quite a lot. I've used it for business, I use it for personal reasons, and for large transactions, Transferwise wins hands down. On that 10,000 to the US, they were way cheaper than everybody else, just £35.64 in terms of the fee. So I really like that. And on the lower numbers, they're still incredibly reasonable. And what I like about them is it's super transparent. The fee is shown to you up front. It is exactly the same way of calculating it as for larger transactions. They don't try to bake in things into the various different components. So I really, really like that. Now, what I did just to make it super, super simple for you is I went and did a one-off example where I compared each single one at exactly the same time, trying to send some money abroad. And this is what I got. I sent £100 to dollars, and with Starling Bank, I managed to get $128.16. Now, the exchange rate was 1.2907, and I got charged 70p for the privilege. With Transferwise, I only got $127.65, so a bit less because of their fee structures. I got a 1.2908 exchange rate, so almost exactly the same as with Starling. But I had to pay a £1.11 fee, which is why I got less dollars in the end. With Revolut, it was a little bit more finicky. They don't allow you to check the app as easily. You actually have to go and put in the details of the person you're sending the money to before you can get anything like the rate, etc., which I really didn't like, because you can't go and check how much it's actually going to cost you. You have to be 80% of the way through the process before you can actually see the rates and the fees. So I just banged in some random details of a museum in Arizona, and that managed to do the trick. And in the end, I managed to get $129.10 for my £100 because I didn't have to pay the fee, and I got a 1.2912 exchange rate. So they actually had the best exchange rate out of those, and it could be the difference between the few seconds it took me to check one versus the other, but I actually think they managed to get a slightly better exchange rate, which is another plus there. And there's no fee because that was the only transaction I was making that month. Last, just for laughs, just as a bit of fun at the end, I went and checked with PayPal as well. And with PayPal, the £100 managed to buy me $121.14, which is incredibly poor. We're talking $6 to $8 less than all the other providers are able to offer that these guys are trying to compete with. Their rate was just 1.2412, which is much lower. We're talking about almost a 5% difference. Plus they charge you a £2.99 fee for being able to put money into PayPal from one of the payment methods like your bank account. So you can see exactly what the answer is, depending on what it is that you want to do with it. I hope you found that useful. If you have, please make sure you go and smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. That is so helpful for a young channel like mine to be able to reach more people, to be able to do more interesting content so that I can grow my audience. Thank you so much if you've done it. If you haven't done it, go ahead and do it. I'd be super grateful. If you're interested in more content about personal finance products, about making more money and doing more with the money that you have, make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit the bell so you get notifications every single time one of my videos comes out. I really appreciate you watching this far. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys later.